Today I'm making slime with weird ingredients. These things definitely shouldn't be put into slime, but hit subscribe and let's get started. Okay, so we all know that the first ingredient for slime is glue, but this next ingredient is something that I wouldn't usually put into slime, and it's matcha. This is Nami matcha, and I absolutely love this matcha, so I'm only using 1 teaspoon because I don't want to waste any more. And along with the matcha, I'm also adding a little bit of glycerin just to kind of bind everything together a little bit. Now, I'm actually starting off this recipe with just glue because I feel like when you just add ingredients into pre-made slime, it just melts it. And I actually wanted to make this work because the color was looking so pretty. Another thing I noticed as I mixed it was that it actually smelled so good. I mean, obviously it smells like matcha, but for some reason I was surprised at how strong it smelled. I wanted to kind of make this a matcha latte, so I added some white glue as the milk and mixed it in, kind of hoping that it would be the perfect matcha color. It definitely looks like a strong matcha, but I kind of love that, so I just decided to activate it as it was. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little nervous for this because when you add like an edible food ingredient into slime, it can sometimes make the slime not come together at all. But thankfully, I actually started to see it clump together. One observation I did have though is that this did need a lot of activator. I think I actually went in with 4 different rounds of some pretty strong activator into this, because although it would clump together, it would kind of melt back down again, but it was still definitely forming the slime, so I wasn't worried. I ended up going back in with my hands and just kind of really knead it together. Thankfully, because I added glycerin, it wasn't very stringy at all, and after just a little bit more mixing, it finally came together. I know I said I made this a little bit strong, but I actually really love this color. It's such a bright, vibrant green, and you guys know I love my neon colors. Now the slime was done, I decided to put it into a fresh container and then grab my next ingredient, which is actually a slime ingredient, some soft clay. I took a little chunk of the slime and some clay and mixed it together to try and kind of make this matcha cold foam slime, because I wanted to give it this kind of two-tone swirled effect. I wanted to make this look super realistic, so I even made a tiny little whipped cream dollop to put on top alongside one of these super cute strawberry Fimo slices. And here we have the completed slime. I'm actually very happy with how this turned out. I don't know how it's gonna last because it does have food in it, obviously, but the color is perfect, the texture's super creamy, and it also smells amazing, just like matcha. I will say though, the Nami matcha is so good, I don't think I'll be using it in slime again anytime soon. Okay, this next one I have been waiting to do for months. The story is, I basically bought one of these NeeDoh things and I loved it so much, but it burst. And I was so intrigued what was actually inside of it. You can see at the top here where it kind of fell apart, and this clear kind of slime stuff started leaking out of it. So of course I'm cutting it open and putting it in slime. And this stuff was so strange. I actually have no idea what it is. It was just like a clear dough, like it really wasn't slime. You couldn't stretch it or touch it, but it seemed to be pretty non-stick to the silicone, but would stick to absolutely everything else. And that was my fingers and also the bowl. I'm gonna add glycerin and then I'm gonna add glue. The reason why I'm adding glycerin straight away with this as well is just because I really do think it's gonna help break down whatever this is and just really try and de-stick it from absolutely everything and see if we can actually get this to combine with the glue. Now, it's pretty obvious in these clips that the spatula wasn't working, so I put some gloves on and went straight in with my hands. And surprisingly enough, once this was kind of coated in the glycerin and the glue, it wasn't sticking to the gloves, which was actually amazing, because then I could kind of pull it apart and melt it into the glue that way, and it actually worked. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were a few little chunks in that I just kind of mixed in with my spatula, but other than that, it was pretty smooth. Now, the casing for the NeeDoh was pink, so I thought it was only right to dye this pink. It's definitely not the right shade of pink, but honestly, I don't mind. This looked pretty. I'm not sure if you can really see on camera, but the texture's kind of foamy, but I decided to just keep mixing it and add in the activator, having no clue whether it would work or not. At first, the activator really didn't do anything, but after the second round, the strangest thing happened. Suddenly it started to chunk up and liquid just kind of came out of the slime and it kind of just magically formed. It was so strange. I have no idea how this happened or why it happened, but the texture was also not like a usual slime and had a really weird texture. It was kind of like constantly wet, and I really don't often say this, but I have never felt a texture like this. Also, saying that though, it doesn't mean the texture's nice, because I also would have been fine without having to feel something like this again. I mean, it's definitely not the worst slime in the world, but it was kind of just jiggly and rippy and just was like strange. The best way I can describe it is if it was oobleck and slime mixed together. And strangely enough, it was literally non-stick now, when the issue we had earlier is that it would stick to everything. I have to say, I definitely preferred the texture of the original NeeDoh, and I definitely won't be rushing to do this again, but was it a fun experiment? Definitely. Okay, so next up we have hair gel. Now, I have been wondering what would happen if you mix this into slime for the longest time, mainly because it kind of looks like clear slime in its container, but also it's got a really kind of satisfying thick texture, almost like I could add activator to it and it would turn into slime. But of course that doesn't work, so I'm going to add about half the jar into the bowl. I wanted a pretty hefty amount of it, and then I'm just going to top the rest up with some clear glue and a tiny bit of glycerin again. Now, I was absolutely in love with the color of this, so I didn't want to change that at all, but I did notice that when I mixed it with the glue, it kind of went a bit more opaque. I decided to sparkle it up a bit. I'd add a tiny little bit of glitter because it was kind of giving me like an under the sea vibe. I added in the activator and then just began to mix it. One thing I will say about this is that it did absolutely stink of like cologne. And you know what? I didn't actually hate it. I kind of like the smell. Now, surprisingly, this pretty much activated like normal, but it did have one weird thing that I noticed. It kind of had like a cooling effect on my hands. Almost like when I played with it, it was cooler than the room I was in. I feel like it might be like one of the ingredients or like some type of menthol in it. I don't know. Just to make the texture a little bit more interesting, I added this pack of blue foam beads and then mixed those in again with my spatula. The final texture was actually pretty nice. I will say the base kind of felt a little more jiggly than usual, and I think it might be because the gel might have a high water content. I placed it into a fresh container and then sprinkled these cotton candy beads over it before I topped it with this super cool looking jar charm. I'm really impressed with how this turned out, but would I use hair gel again to make slime with? Probably not. It wasn't a bad slime whatsoever, but did it really do anything revolutionary? No. But I do like the color it gave it. That's one good positive. And weirdly, the smell. Okay, this next one's kind of on theme with the matcha, and if you don't know what this is a coffee pod for an espresso machine. Although matcha is a completely different type of thing, I thought this might work. And if not, it's still a fun experiment. I peeled off the top part of the coffee pod and then just emptied it into the bowl. And similar to the matcha, I started with clear glue to kind of give it the espresso feeling. The first thing that I thought was maybe I should have used instant coffee because these have coffee grains in, and coffee grains aren't gonna dissolve fully. Or actually at all, like they're gonna stay in it the whole time. Now that was fully mixed together, I added quite a lot of white glue and again a splash of glycerin. To be honest, this to me was actually so satisfying to mix these two together because it actually looked like coffee and milk. Once it was combined, it kind of looked like a chocolate mocha coffee, so I went straight in with the activator to see if this would work. I was very skeptical about this because it seemed to activate pretty quickly and then kind of melt back down again, similar to how the matcha slime was, apart from this was taking a lot more activator and getting a lot more sticky. At one point I thought that this was not coming together at all because it did completely go back down to liquid, but I added a ton of activator and then made the mistake of going in with my hands. I really thought this was ready to come together and I just needed to knead it a little bit more, but I was so wrong because this didn't need kneading, it just needed a ton more activator. The activator you can see me adding here was actually a different activator I made that was a lot stronger, and it finally started to work and not remelt down. Once it was all ready, I placed it into a fresh container and grabbed my trusty ice cream scoop and some clay to make an ice cream topper for it. I've had these Starbucks Frappuccino drink charms for the longest time and I haven't been able to use them, and this was the perfect opportunity for it. This looked so great, and I also forgot to mention it smelled great because obviously adding coffee grounds to it is definitely going to make it smell strongly of coffee. Another thing to mention, because of the coffee grains, the slime kind of had a sand-like texture and it actually felt kind of exfoliating on my hands. I feel like I'm kind of tempted to try this again, but with a lot more coffee and maybe an even stronger activator. And I think this and the matcha might have been my favorite ones from this video. Well, I had so much fun mixing these weird ingredients into slime. It's always fun to test out new recipes and to see which ingredients worked and which ones didn't. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure to hit subscribe. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.